Hi and welcome back to my knitting podcast, and this is episode number 4. My name is Wilma and I'm a 23-year-old knitter based in Uppsala here in Sweden, and during my free time I like to knit and tend to do a lot of that when I'm not studying. I currently study for my Master of Science in Pharmacy here in Uppsala. I really hope you will enjoy this podcast episode I have planned for you. I have 2 finished objects and 4 works in progress to talk about. So I hope you are excited and cozy. So let's get started. So the first finished object I would like to talk about is the sweater that I'm wearing. And it's the beautiful terracotta sweater by the designer called Lena, Holme, Samsøe. This is a beautiful dropped shoulder construction colorwork sweater. And it also features these textured parts. So as you can see, some different textures. This is a DK weight sweater, and the recommended gauge is 22 stitches per 10 centimeters, I think. And it's knit on 4mm needles, well, the stockinette part, and then I think one of these textured patterns requires a 3.5, and then the ribbed collar and the cuffs requires 3mm needles. I'm very pleased with this sweater. I really like the soft contrast between the colors I chose for it. I also really like the oversized fit. I knitted size 2 on the recommended needles and met gauge. So this sweater gives me a positive ease of 25 centimeters, which is also the recommended positive ease, I believe. And I really like the fit. I really like this dropped shoulder construction and the voluminous wide sleeves. I knitted my sweater in Filcolana Arwetta, held together with Isaiah silk mohair, and this is a yarn combination I've talked about a lot on this channel already, since it's a combination I really like. And yeah, it created a very drapey, soft fabric, perfect for this sweater. So I would really recommend it if you would like to try and knit this sweater. And I do actually have some leftover yarns here to show you. So this is everything I've left from knitting this sweater. And here's the Arwetta. This is the color 977, also called marzipan, I believe. And the mohair is in the color 0. And for the blue color, I used the Arwetta in color 340 and the Isaiah silk mohair in the color 41. I really like how soft contrast this color combination created. I mentioned in a previous episode that I didn't really enjoy knitting the colorwork flat that you have to do in the beginning of this project. You start off by knitting, I think, the back part first and then the front, and then you continue knitting in the round. I just found that part a bit tedious and fiddly, and I didn't really enjoy that part. But I just powered through and made it. And yeah, it was definitely worth it in the end. I'm really happy with the finished result and have already received a lot of compliments on this sweater, which means a lot. I'm sure some of you will know that feeling when you get a compliment on a hand knit sweater that you made yourself, and that's just a very special feeling, and yeah, something you really appreciate. I would also like to mention that I decided to insert a elastic band inside this ribbed double folded collar. I just felt like the collar got a bit stretched out and was worried that it was going to stretch even more. So I just inserted it, and it turned out good, I think. I believe that was everything I had to say about this sweater. I definitely recommend it to anyone who's interested in trying it out and knitting it. And it was a very well-written pattern, easy to follow, and enjoyable knit, I would say. So the second finished object is the famous Sophie scarf by the designer called PetiteKnit. And it's this very cute little garter stitch scarf, and it features I-cord edge along the entire scarf. I can unravel it so you can see it better. So this is what it looks like. So it has this center point, and then you decrease on one side and increase on the other. This is a perfect project for leftover yarn and leftover skeins, since it only requires a very small amount of yarn. It comes in 2 different sizes, and the smallest size, which is this one, only requires about 20 grams of yarn. But it's also a perfect pattern to use up exactly the amount of yarn you have left. And by that I mean that you can increase until you've knit up exactly half of the amount of yarn you have and weigh the yarn as you knit. Then you can start decreasing. So you make sure that you use up the yarn that you have and don't run out in the end. And that's what I decided to do, since I wanted to use up this 25 gram skein of Cardiff Cashmere Classic. So it's a very luxurious soft yarn. So yeah, Cardiff Cashmere Classic in the color 599. This is a very famous pattern that I've seen so many times on Instagram and YouTube. And if I'm honest, I would never have thought that I would become a big fan of the famous Sophie scarf. It hasn't really interested me before, but one day I just craved a Sophie scarf and decided to knit one, and I really enjoy it. It's a very cute, a very fun accessory to dress up a basic outfit, and it's also very practical since it keeps your neck warm when you don't want to wear a big scarf, for example. And yeah, I actually really recommend this pattern. It was a very satisfying quick knit, and also a fun way and relatively affordable way to incorporate some luxurious cashmere in your closet. So yeah, there you have it. The famous Sophie scarf. I need some coffee before we continue. Okay, so let's go over to works in progress. And the first work in progress I would like to share with you is a new project that I haven't shared on this podcast before. And here it is. So this is the Olive Turtleneck by Pernille Larsen. And this is a beautiful all-over lace top-down raglan sweater. And this is knit in, I would say, a Aran weight gauge, but the recommended yarn is to hold I think it's a fingering weight wool together with 2 strands of lace weight mohair. So I just decided to not include any mohair and only knit this one in a Aran weight yarn. And the recommended gauge is actually different based on what size you knit. So I believe some sizes requires a gauge of 16 stitches in 22 row gauge, and other sizes requires a 17 stitch gauge and a 24 row gauge. And I'm knitting size 2 or a small, and that size requires a gauge of 17 stitches and 24 rows, and is recommended to be knit on 6mm needles. And the other sizes that requires a 16 stitch gauge are recommended to be knit on a 6.5mm needle. So yeah, 2 different needle sizes and recommended gauge according to what size you knit. So as you can see, I decided to knit this sweater in a vibrant, beautiful light blue. and it's actually quite similar to this color. It's definitely a color I've been drawn to recently, and this yarn is a beautiful yarn that was kindly gifted to me from a Swedish yarn brand called Fåret, or translated to black sheep. And as I said, it's a Swedish yarn brand that was very kind and reached out to me and asked if I would like to try this new yarn. And of course, I jumped at the opportunity to be able to try out this yarn, since it's a brand I really enjoy, and I really like to be able to support a Swedish yarn brand. And let me show you the yarn. So here it is, the base called Merino from Svarta, and this is a 100% merino wool, and 150 gram skein is about 100 meters. So is that a Aran weight yarn or is it a worsted weight yarn? I'm not sure actually, but I really enjoy this yarn. It's very soft. I think this will be perfect for a turtleneck, and very nice to wear next to skin. So I would definitely recommend this yarn so far. So back to the sweater, I would also like to point out that I decided to knit the collar a bit shorter than what the pattern calls for. I'm actually not quite sure if the pattern calls for a long turtleneck that you fold down, or if it's just a longer one layer turtleneck. However, I decided to knit it shorter. I saw some project pictures from different knitters on Ravelry, and really liked how it looked when having this a bit shorter collar. And so I decided to go with that. And the pattern also calls for I think it's called a balloon sleeve, or at least a sleeve that's quite wide and then cinches in around the cuff. And I'm not sure yet if I'm going to knit that sleeve or if I'm going to knit it more like straight or a bit flared out. I don't know yet. So you just have to stay tuned and see what I decide on. Yeah, other than that, it's a very enjoyable and quick knit, since it's knit on this larger gauge, and the lace pattern is quite easy to memorize. So when you've reached the end of the raglan increases and joined round, then at least for me, I don't have to check the pattern or the chart anymore. I can just read my knit and keep on knitting. So yeah, a very enjoyable knit and very satisfying knit, since it's so quick. And I'm very excited to have this finished sweater, and I think it will be very beautiful just paired with some dark jeans maybe, or a black pair of trousers. Yeah, I'm very excited, and I really enjoy this color and also the yarn. So thank you to Svarta for gifting me this yarn. I really appreciate it and would definitely recommend it. So the next work in progress is the Søljejakke by a Norwegian designer called Lille Frost. So this is a beautiful wrapped cardigan that features some cables and lovely details. So it has cables along the bottom edge, along the sleeve edge, and then also along the back, as you can see here, and as well as along the entire sleeve. And I do also believe that the tie that you knit to tie the cardigan is also cabled. So a lot of lovely cables, and it's worked from the bottom up, and you start off by knitting the body, which I have here, and then you knit the sleeves separately from the bottom up, and I have one here and the other one here. And then you connect the sleeves with the body in the round and continue shaping the shoulders with the raglan decreases, I think. Yeah, you create it with raglan decreases. And then once you've done that, you will stick the front opening to create the cardigan's opening. So as you can see here, I've put some stitches on hold since one cable on each side of the cardigan's opening will continue up. So you first stick the cardigan and then you continue knitting one cable on each side. So the front band of the opening will also be a cable. And it's knit on 3mm needles with a fingering weight yarn. And the recommended yarn is called Sølje by the Norwegian yarn brand called Hillesvåg. And I believe that's why the pattern is called Søljejakke. I, however, decided to knit mine in Hillesvåg Vilje instead. So here it is. This is a 100% Norwegian lamb's wool, and this one is in the color 449 Marled light beige. And this is my first time trying out any yarn from the brand Hillesvåg, and I opted for Vilje instead of Sølje, since I had read that some find this one a bit softer than Sølje. I haven't felt Sølje, so I can't for sure tell you if that's my opinion. However, I really enjoy this yarn. This has definitely become a new favorite of mine. What I really like about this yarn is that it has the quality of a rustic yarn, so it feels a bit rustic when you touch it. It's very sturdy and warm. However, I don't find it itchy at all. And I also noticed that after steam blocking some of my knitted pieces here, the yarn blooms and softens so much compared to what it feels like in the skein. So I really like the feel and texture of the yarn when it's blocked, and I can only imagine that it will be even softer after washing and wet blocking it. And I've tried to put it on my skin and see how it feels when I move around in it, and I can really tell that I will really enjoy this yarn. So I would really recommend this yarn for anyone who likes this type of yarn, and as well as for those who would like to try a more rustic yarn, but also one that isn't itchy and too rustic. So a very good yarn to try out if you want to dip your toes into more rustic yarns. However, the only negative thing I have to say about this yarn is that I noticed that the yarn thickness in one of the skeins I received was quite a bit thicker than the other skeins, so much that I couldn't knit with that part of the skein because it was so obvious that the yarn thickness was different from the rest. So I was a bit disappointed when I noticed that, since now I'm a bit worried that that may affect how much yarn I have to finish this cardigan, and also because I really enjoy this yarn so much. So that was a bummer, and I really hope that this is a one-time thing, a one-time problem. Very annoying since I can't use that yarn for this cardigan. Other than that, I really like this yarn, and I haven't noticed that problem with my other skeins, so I really cross my fingers that it will be okay. So back to the cardigan. I'm knitting size 1, so the smallest size, and on the recommended gauge, which is a 24 stitch gauge and a 30 row gauge. Yeah, and I really enjoyed this project. I really like the pattern. However, it only comes in Norwegian. I decided to buy and download the Norwegian pattern even though I'm not Norwegian. and try my best to translate it. And yeah, it works. But I would still recommend this pattern and recommend you to try out and knit it and translate the pattern, since it's so, according to me, beautiful and unique. A very beautiful cardigan. So I really hope that the pattern will come out in a few other languages, so more people can enjoy it. So the third work in progress is a cardigan that I'm knitting for my mom. And that is the Copenhagen cardigan. And it's a pattern by PetiteKnit. It's a, according to me, quite simple but timeless and beautiful cardigan that features this built-in button band. So you knit it as you go, and it's not something you pick up and knit afterwards. And the recommended gauge is a 21 stitch gauge and 28 row gauge. I did, however, not meet that gauge with my yarn choice. So I have a tighter gauge. It's a 22.5 stitch gauge on the recommended needles, which is a 4mm needles. So therefore I decided to size up. So I'm knitting a size large to hopefully fit a small to medium size. I believe that the pattern calls for a fingering wool held together with a lace weight mohair, if I'm not mistaken. But since my mom is a bit more sensitive and didn't want anything that could bother her skin or be itchy, I decided to replace the mohair with a lace weight cashmere instead. So the yarn that I'm using is Filcolana Arwetta held together with Gepard Garn Cashmere Lace. This one is in the color 950, and the cashmere lace is in the color 520. So this created a very nice, almost a bit variegated or marled, or I don't know the right term, but this color variation, a very subtle color variation. My mom has tried it once and she really likes it, so I'm excited to have this finished for her and see the finished garment. We've also decided to modify the pattern a bit. So for example, I'm not going to include the pockets that the pattern calls for, just because my mom didn't want those. And we also decided to knit fewer buttonholes with a larger gap in between each buttonhole than what the pattern calls for. And I only included 3 buttonholes at the top of the cardigan. And that's because my mom wanted to have, you know, that look when you only have a few buttons at the top and then the rest of the cardigan open, so you can see like the shirt underneath. And yeah, I hope and believe that this will become a staple and easy to wear cardigan that goes with a lot of outfits. So yeah, there you have it, the Copenhagen cardigan. Okay, so on to the fourth and final work in progress that I would like to share, and that is the neck warmer 35 by the designer called Thea Vesterby. This is a beautiful cabled neck warmer that features this ribbed and thick turtleneck. A beautiful pattern that I discovered recently that I think will become a staple and a perfect accessory to have underneath like my coats that are a bit open and v-neck. I really like this design. I think it's very unique and interesting with this very beautiful cabled motif. This comes in one size only, and the recommended gauge is a 20 stitch gauge and a 28 row gauge knit on 5mm needles. And so far I really enjoy this project. I've only knit a few rounds, as you can see, but yeah, I'm really pleased with the pattern. This is my first time knitting a pattern from this designer, and yeah, I really enjoy it so far. Quite straightforward and easy to read and understand. And the yarn that I'm using is this one, and this is a beautiful yarn that was very kindly gifted to me from a new to me yarn brand, and the brand is called Nak Yang Yarn, and it's a South Korean yarn brand. They reached out to me and asked if I would like to try out some of their yarns, which I was happy to do, since I would really like to widen my yarn horizon and try out some different yarn brands from different parts of the world. So they sent me a few different yarn bases to try out. I would also like to mention real quickly that this isn't a paid partnership. This brand just kindly reached out to me and asked if I would like to try out their yarns and give my honest opinion about them. So I really appreciate that, and so far I'm very pleased and happy with the yarn that I received, and impressed by the quality. And this was one of the yarn bases that really stood out to me, and this is called Bliss, and it's a incredibly soft yarn, and contains, let's see, polyester, nylon, wool, and cashmere. And at first I was a bit skeptical about the polyester and nylon content, but then after having felt the yarn, I was very impressed about how extremely soft this yarn is. And therefore I wanted to use this yarn for something that was going to be like close to my neck. And also, since it's so soft, I was a bit worried that this might be a yarn that pills a lot, and therefore I thought that this neck warmer would be a perfect project for this yarn, since it doesn't have sleeves that could rub against like the body on a shirt, for example, to create pills. So yeah, I think this will be perfect for this project, and I'm very excited to have this piece in my wardrobe, and also to try out this so far very beautiful yarn and nice yarn brand that I'm very impressed by. So thank you so much to Nak Yang Yarn for gifting me this yarn. I'm very grateful. So with that said, I think I've said everything I would like to say about all my current works in progress. I really hope that you got inspired and maybe got some knitting done. And I would again like to take this opportunity and really thank all of you so much for continuing supporting me and for making this YouTube journey so wonderful and pleasurable. I'm extremely grateful for your support, and hope that you enjoyed this episode as well. Yeah, and I hope to see you in my next episode. And until then, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, and happy knitting. Bye!